Hello and welcome to another video. Today we're going to take a look at a super strong meta team for Open Great League with Registeel, Sableye, and Medicham. The way the team works is you use either Sableye or Medicham to lure out the Flyer or Charmer so Registeel can deal with it and so the other Pokemon doesn't have to see it. This video is kind of long, but that's because there were just so many good battles, so many good plays. I wanted to showcase all of them, so let's take a look at them. Going into the first game, we lead into a Stunfisk. You know when Stunfisk? Yikes. We have to safe swap Sableye immediately. Sableye is generally the safe swap of choice, and they counter swap a Pelipper. Fun fact, Sableye with 1 Shadow Claws advantage will win this into 2 shields because you do outpace to 2 foul plays or to 3 foul plays before they get to 2 Weather Balls and a Hurricane. So I can just safely shield this because they're not getting to a Weather Ball and a Hurricane because they let the first foul play go. So if it's the Hurricane, we shielded it. If it's the Weather Ball, they're only getting to another Weather Ball and it's fine. Now we can get shield advantage, or we can get switch advantage. We give shield advantage to the opponent. They bring back in the stuns. If we go for the foul play on CMP, I probably should have gone for the return here because it was on a CMP. It would have done more damage. But I thought if they didn't CMP me, I wanted to get off another foul play. But they did CMP me, so now I can get Medicham onto Stunfisk. Medicham is actually very good against Unova Stunfisk, as well as Galarian Stunfisk, obviously. They farm up to almost a Mud Bomb before swapping into a Cresselia. So it was the team I thought it was. Junkers has made this team and had a lot of success with it, I think. It is the Cresselia in the back, and as you can see, Cresselia just does absolutely no damage to this steel wall in Registeel, and the Zap Cannon does about half. And now Cresselia is even debuffed, so it's gonna do even less with its moves. They go for another Moonblast. It takes 7-7-6 for the Cresselia to get to Moonblast, 6-6-5 for it to get to Grass Nuts, so it's like always 7 for Moonblast and 6 for Grass Nuts, and then 1 less for the third one. They tried to snipe with a Stunfisk, but they were 1 Mud Shot or Thunder Shock away from the Mud Bomb, so we made it into the Medicham to catch the Mud Bomb on the Medicham, and then it takes 5-4 for the Stunfisk to get to the Mud Bomb, so we can go for the Ice Punch on CMP. The Stunfisk has the exact same stats as the Galarian Stunfisk, so Medicham does win CMP quite convincingly against it. Then we can get to another Ice Punch on the Cresselia, and this shield is not any strategy. I'm just realizing the game is over, because Cresselia cannot take out the Registeel, no way. So I just want to finish this game as quickly as possible, so I put up the shield because counters do more damage than lock-ons do, and it will be quicker to counter the Cresselia down than to lock on it down. But we do have to lock on it all the way down. And then they concede last second. What the hell, opponent? Next game, lead into a Shadow and a Ninetales. They swap into a Lantern. We don't have a clear response to this. Medicham is a pretty decent response, but it's not like 100% certain you can win it. Because if they shield 2 Psychics, or if they call a bait, they can actually flip the 2 shields with the Water Gun Lantern. So I do want to stay in and chip the Lantern a little bit before swapping into Medicham, because I really want switch when there's Shadow and Ninetales in the lead. We do get the attack drop, and as you can see, the Surf is just going to do barely any damage to Medicham at this point. They are going to get to another one, but that's absolutely fine by me. I would rather get the energy than not take this damage. So we do let them get to another Surf. And now if it's a Powder Snow Alolan Ninetales, I think we'll be able to get to 2 Sidekicks, but because it's Charm, we saw the damage from the first Charm. I don't think we are living another Charm on Medicham, so I do just decide to go for the Ice Punch immediately, to hope that we can bring the Alolan Ninetales into a range where we can fast move it down and we don't have to throw a move at it. Now, of course, we're going to wait out the switch time because we switched out significantly later than the opponent, so I wanted to bring up the switch timer again. And then we bring in the Registeel. They go for a move. They actually bring a Registeel quite low with these charms. Shadow Charms are doing a lot of damage. They're staying in because I'm forced to throw a move in order to take it out, but I do not want to. We bring in the Sableye, save all the energy on Registeel, take a lot of charm damage on Sableye, but I think this was the correct play to save all the energy on Registeel instead of having to throw energy at the Alolan Ninetales. Then they bring in a Medicham. We do have to start shielding these because Ice Punch will bring it into a range where we might get countered down, but they're actually running Pop, and this is not good. Because they get significantly faster to the pops, and they're also doing significantly more damage with counter. But I'm realizing, because we got that energy head start by swapping Sableye in on the Alolan Ninetales, we are going to be able to outpace to 3 foul plays before they get to 3 pops. So we can just shield the first 2, and then get to this 3rd foul play on the Medicham, and they should take them out. And that is a good game. And yes, we win. Next game, lead into Galarian Stunfisk. This is not like terrible, but it is a bad matchup, so we swap into Sableye. Again, they might very well have a flyer behind the Stunfisk. I should not throw this because they don't have a good response to Sableye, clearly, since they're not swapping out immediately. They want to stay in and chip me. So if I come out of this with 8 Shadow Claws, I can threaten whatever they bring in afterwards a lot more. But because I'm only coming out of this with 2 Shadow Claws, I can threaten a lot less. So I think I would have had a lot better of a chance of flipping the secondary matchup if I had held on to my energy instead of throwing it on the Galarian Stunfisk. They bring in a Sableye. If I was able to farm down by shielding, I would have probably done so to win switch, but I don't think we would have been able to, so I do decide to let it go, and then I go for the foul play. I want to get my Sableye as low as possible here before throwing it in case they no-shield it, to give whatever they bring in afterwards as little farm as possible, but they do shield it, which is a little bit unfortunate. Now I bring in the Registeel, we can just absorb all of this energy. This is also one of the things that makes Registeel so good. It can just absorb so much energy. We can lock on down, or we can bring in the Medicham and get an energy head start. Save all of the energy on Registeel, and now because we got this energy head start, we're going to be able to outpace their Medicham in the back. So we go for the Psychic. They only have 1 shield, meaning they're a lot less incentivized to shield. And also because I only have 1 shield, I'm thinking if they're running Psychic, most likely gonna go straight for it. So I do decide to shield up the first one. An Earthquake does do more damage, so maybe I should have no shielded. But at this point I should have definitely baited. And the reason why I should bait here is because if they let the Psychic go, they cannot. They have to put my Medicham into a range before letting their Medicham go, where their Stunfisk can deal with it with 1 Earthquake. And an Earthquake only does about 47%. Also, they were only 2 away from the Rock Slide, so they tried to throw it on Medicham, but instead we catch it on Registeel, and then we go for a Focus Blast. But I don't want to take out the Stunfisk, because if I take out the Stunfisk, they're going to bring in a Medicham, farm my Registeel down, so I would rather let the Stunfisk get some mud shots onto my Medicham or onto my Registeel, so that the Medicham gets as little farm as possible. Of course, I didn't want the Stunfisk to come out with the move, so I had to take it out. But because the Medicham only got 1 counter's worth of energy, we do take it out, and that is a good game. Next game, lead into a Sableye. We cannot swap out here, unfortunately. This is a lead, you just kind of have to stay in, because of course Medicham doesn't want to see this Sableye. I do decide to shield up the first move, because as I'm forced to stay in anyways, I would like to shield the first foul play, because I'm basically trying to play the long game here. They do decide to no-shield their Sableye, and then they bring in a Registeel, so we go for the Focus Blast. And now I do make a bit of a mistake. As you can see, I'm just going to explain something here. Oh, this is not the game. Never mind. Another game. They do shield it. There's another game where I'm going to explain something. I'm sorry. We don't really have a good answer to this Registeel when they decided to shield it. I could have stayed in with my Registeel and taken a Focus Blast, but that would just done a lot of damage. If I had swapped in Sableye, that would not have been ideal, so we swap in Medicham. This is not ideal either against the Registeel with a lot of energy. But yeah, I think this was the best of the options. They do go for the Zap Cannon on Medicham. Now we can bring in the Sableye. I don't know if they try to catch on their Sableye here, but they do have energy, so they can get off this energy. I'm thinking we can live this and then farm down the Sableye, no problem. The Registeel is very close to a move, so if they bring that in, we want to go for a move immediately. Also, we have 100 energy, so we want to go for a move immediately. Now we can't go for the foul play. If they no-shield, we can go for another one. And then they bring us Charizard. And I do make a bit of a mistake here by giving them 3 wing attacks head start. But because it takes 11 wing attacks for the Charizard to get to a Dragon Claw and a Blast Burn, we will be able to outpace with the Registeel to a Zap Cannon, because we will get it 1 lock on when they throw one of the moves. So they wouldn't have been able to bait and get to a Blast Burn. Next game, lead into a Shadow Swampert. Or was it a regular Swampert? I think it was Shadow. We swap in Sableye, they counter swap Drapion. We go for the bait because the return does about 76%. They really cannot let this go. So I think it's a pretty safe bait to make against the Shadow Drapion. They do shield it, and then they go for the Crunch. We don't want to shield the first one because we can get the defense debuff. But at this point, if they only run Crunch, if they run Crunch and Sludge Bomb, I think we can outpace to a foul play and a return before they get to 4 Crunches, which is what they need in order to grab both shields and take out my Sableye. But because they're running Aqua Tail, they will be able to outpace. So they will be able to get 2 Aqua Tails off before I get to the return. So I decide to go for the foul play, or for the foul play instead, to put the Drapion into a range where they still have to throw pretty much immediately against my Sableye, but also now we can lock on down the Drapion. And they don't have any shields, and a Shadow Swampert does not like taking Focus Blast. We get the lock on down right before they get to another crunch, which is pretty nice. Now we can't get to the Focus Blast on the Swampert, does massive damage, bring in the Medicham, they bring in a Noctowl, but up shields, this is an absolutely fine matchup for Medicham. We can just go for the first Ice Punch, and in the 1-0 shield scenario against Noctowl, you can just shield the move, at least if you're ahead on energy. Medicham does usually win CMP, and I could go for the CMP by going 1 over, but if they run an attack-weighted Noctowl, they will win CMP. I don't want to risk that, so we go for the Ice Punch immediately, take out the Noctowl, and now we can counter down the Shadow Swampert, and that is a good game. Next game, very good lead into an Umbreon. They decide to stay in, and then they bring in a Unova and Stunfisk. I've seen more and more of these. You can just counter swap Medicham. As long as you're semi-quick on the counter swap, Medicham will just be able to win every even shield scenario against Unova and Stunfisk. As I say, it takes 5-4, 5-4 for Mud Bombs. Beforehand, Discharge was more energy efficient for Unova and Stunfisk. But now that the Mud Bomb has been buffed, that is actually the more energy efficient move to go for if both of them are equally effective. We go for the Ice Punch on what I thought would be the CMP, but my opponent didn't throw, so we just take out the Stunfisk. Also, again, Stunfisk has the same stats as the Galarian Stunfisk, so we would have been able to win that CMP. They bring in a Shadow Charizard to farm down Medicham, and this is definitely not ideal. The situation is made quite a lot easier by them no-shielding that, because now we can farm them down with Sableye, 2-shielding Sableye. They bring in Umbreon. I maybe should have done a few more Shadow Claws to load up on some energy on Sableye before swapping into Registeel. But yeah, the Umbreon is switch locked. It does take 2 moves to take out the Umbreon anyways, so I might as well go for the Zap Cannon to try and get a debuff. Because 2 Zap Cannons, or a Zap Cannon plus a Focus Blast would also KO. And 1 Focus Blast is not enough. They do decide to shield, and I'm just thinking the Charizard has so much energy. I don't want to shield here, no matter what. At this point, I probably should go for the Focus Blast, because it does more damage. It would put the Umbreon into a range where it would have been easier to handle with Sableye. And I'm just going to let my Registeel go here. So it would have made more sense to go for the Focus Blast there. But we do let the Registeel go, bring in the Sableye. We let them get to another move, because this is not really threatening. It's just a foul play. This is not what we want to shield. The Charizard is still the one with all the dangerous moves. And now they're going to bring in the Charizard, go for a move immediately. There are 7 wing attacks, so if this is a Dragon Claw, they're 2 away from the next one. But they full sent the Blast Burn for some reason. I don't really understand this, because obviously I was going to shield on my Sableye. I was the only Pokemon remaining. We go for the foul play, takes out the Shadow Charizard. A foul play does about 15% to an Umbreon, so I'm thinking that a foul play might be enough to put it into a range where we can Shadow Claw down, which is why I went for it. It was not really a bait. It might have been a little bit tough to Shadow Claw down if they had no-shielded this, but because they shielded, we can just get to the return before they get to another move, and that should be a very good game against this Umbreon. Actually, a lot more of a tough game than I would have expected. That Charizard getting a farm down was not nice, but as you can see, first set we get a 5-0. Full transparency, I was 7-1 at this point because I started with this team in the set before. So we have gotten 1 loss. Next game, lead into a Shadow Granbull. Of course, they swap out into a Swampert. And I actually learned something new today. I learned something new about this game every day. But apparently, even a regular Swampert, if it lands an Earthquake, it can farm down a Medicham before the Medicham gets to 3 Ice Punches. And then it can flip switch. Usually you don't want to shield the first move from Swampert, I don't think. Because they usually go Hydro Cannon. And I wasn't really aware that the Earthquake would threaten this much from a regular Swampert. But as you can see, even if I had gone for the double Ice Punch, I did go for the Psychic the first time around, which was also a bit debatable. But now they just farm us all the way down. And they come out with a move even. I think they had the Earthquake, but they do decide to go for a Hydro Cannon. I'm just going to have to hope that they're semi-weak to Registeel. Obviously, the Granbull is pretty easy to take care of with the Registeel, but they have a Diggersby in the back. And it takes 12 mud shots for the Diggersby to get to a Fire Punch and an Earthquake. So I'm thinking, when I'm looking at my energy here, even if this is a bait, I think we might be able to outpace to the Earthquake. It is debate. Can we get to the Focus Blast before they get to the Earthquake? We get to it on CMP and we win the CMP. Fun fact, we only won this CMP because the Diggersby was so very bad. Or so very good, I should say. It has very, very good IVs. So we take out the Diggersby, and of course we're gonna outpace the Grand Bull. It takes 8 charms for the Grand Bull to get to any move. So we get to the Zap Cannon on the Grand Bull, and Registeel sweeps that game. Next game, lead into a Noctowl. They swap into a Sableye. We don't have a clear response to this, but once again, usually you wanna go for the foul play before you get debuffed. Makes sense, right? I think even though you get debuffed, it makes more sense to keep hold of the energy, because now if they had 8 Shadow Claws, it's a lot more difficult for me to swap in my Sableye even though they were like attack debuffed. But because they only have 2 Shadow Claws, this is a pretty easy situation for me. I can just bring in Sableye and no shield the first one, and I could throw the move before they get to another one here, but it only does about 43%, so it wouldn't have taken them out. So instead I decide to overfarm and shield. And now we're going to undercharge this a little bit to farm down the Sableye afterwards. I don't want to undercharge it too much. I don't want to risk it. But they do decide to swap out the Sableye. I think it had 2 Shadow Claws advantage, or 2 Shadow Claws worth of energy. And now they bring in the Umbreon. Noctowl. And we go for the foul play, and we do make it to a return. Usually a foul play plus a return is enough to take out a Noctowl, but that is only if you get like a lot of Shadow Claws in as well. So it's not quite enough to take out the Noctowl. We bring in the Registeel, and I realize the Noctowl has a lot of energy here. It's going to be able to get to 2 Shadow Balls, which would KO the Registeel before we can lock on them down. But they can't get to 2 moves before we counter them down. So we bring in the Medicham to counter down the Noctowl, and then they bring in a Quagsire. Also, we get an energy advantage on Medicham, which is pretty nice. We do have to be wary of the Sableye. We really don't want them to catch a move. So as you see, I'm going to wait a turn every time before throwing, to throw in the middle of their mud shot so they can't catch. Go for the Psychic. They do decide to shield it. We just need to land 1 Psychic, and then we can counter the Quagsire down. In this situation, I do also want to shield this. The Sableye is 4 away from a foul play if I counted correctly, but it's very low, so I think we should be able to counter them down. But if we take a Mud Bomb, the Sableye might be able to Shadow Claws down, so I decide to catch this next Mud Bomb on Registeel, but my opponent does something very nice here. They undercharge the Mud Bomb, and then they farm up again on the Quagsire to almost another Mud Bomb, I think, and then they bring in Sableye. I have to throw a move to take out this Sableye, because otherwise it's just going to Shadow Claw me down and potentially come out with a move. So we try and lock on down the Quagsire, but they come out with a lot of energy, and they deny our counter, meaning if they have 2 Mud Bombs, they're going to get off both of them. They get off the first Mud Bomb, but they don't have the second one, so we can counter down the Quagsire. That got a lot more close than I would have liked it to. Next game, lead into a Deoxys. Again, another lead where we can't really swap out because Medicham really doesn't want to see it, but also a lead where Medicham is usually going to do very well in the back. Not always. I did run into one person running a Galarian Weezing behind their Deoxys, and it was a terrible time. They swap a Dugong into my Registeel, and this just tells me they are trying to lure out my counter user. This is the age-old Deoxys double eyes, as you've probably seen 1,000 times already this season. So I'm thinking if I can use Registeel to take out the Dugong, I can get Sableye onto Deoxys and Medicham onto whatever they have in the back, which I think is a pretty good situation. But I haven't looked up my Dugong matchups enough, or I haven't played it. Maybe I should try it out. It has gotten buffed. I just don't like it. But one move from Registeel is not enough to take out the Dugong, so we have to get to another one, but we get there on the CMP. Takes 5-4, 5-4 for the Dugong, and Dugong does win CMP, so now we have to let the Registeel go, and now we can bring in the Sableye. But with 3 Shadow Claws advantage, Sableye does beat the Alolan Sandslash that I was expecting in the back, but it's not an Alolan Sandslash in the back, it's a Stunfisk. I'm thinking there's probably a pretty good chance they're going to try and bait my Sableye here. So I try to catch not the Earthquake, but the bait from the Stunfisk on my Medicham. But it is the Earthquake. This is also alright. I'm thinking Sableye can clutch this game. They load up to another Earthquake, and then they bring in the Deoxys. But here, this is really bad for me. Either I have to take out the Deoxys, so it's not going to get off any moves on my Sableye, or I'm gonna leave it with a lot of health so I can get a big farm down on it. I end up throwing an Ice Punch, and we barely don't get to another one, meaning we get only 1 Shadow Claw's worth of energy and they come out with a move. Absolute worst case situation for me. They should be very close to 2 Rock Slides here. A Rock Slide does about 33%. It's going to be very close to take out the Sableye if it doesn't take it out. We go for the first foul play. Now, can we get to another foul play before they get to another Rock Slide? Yes, we can. I think they actually had it, but they miscounted on my Sableye, or they lost count and went for the Earthquake, thinking Rock Slide might not have been enough. I'm pretty sure they had the Rock Slide, but they just didn't throw it. Next game, we lead into another Deoxys. This is like pretty okay for Registeel, because like despite the fact that the Deoxys is doing super effective with counters, it's just a pretty neutral matchup overall. I do want to land a move on the Deoxys to put it into a range where Medicham can handle it. I'm very much expecting Medicham to be the one that should sweep this game. But this Deoxys is actually not even running Thunderbolt, it looks like, because they're throwing a Rock Slide instead. And Registeel making this matchup a lot better. But now, because we've landed a Zap Cannon, we put the Deoxys into a range where Medicham can handle it. We bring in Sableye, and they bring in Dugong. I didn't want my Registeel to get farmed down by the Deoxys, basically. So, yeah, brought in the Sableye. Looking at how much damage that foul play did, now that we're getting attack debuffed, I don't think a foul play is enough. And I'm not assuming, I really don't think they're going to shield it. So actually go for the full send return on the Dugong. And this does take out the Dugong. Don't be afraid to overkill. And it is the double eyes in the back with Alolan Sandslash. Once again, regular Alolan Sandslash here. And because the Deoxys is so low, this should be a pretty good game. We do land the foul play. They did do 7 Shadow Claws. It takes 6/6/5 for the drill runs, 5/5/5 for the ice punches. So they should be on 1 Shadow Claw now. Bring in the Deoxys. I foolishly shield the first one again. And it is the Rock Slide. They bait me with the Rock Slide. Again, I was thinking I want to shield the first Psycho Boost because it does significantly more damage than the following ones, but they bait me with the Rock Slide. It's just so painful. So now they get to 2 Psycho Boosts, meaning if they can get to another move on Alolan Sandslash, they might be able to take out Medicham. But they should be 4 away from a move, and also we have a catch on Registeel. But yeah, counters do too much damage to Alolan Sandslash, so we can't just take it out with Medicham and get another 4-1 set here. I did do very well in the beginning, and then it, full transparency, went kind of downhill afterwards. I did do 3-2 in the next set, and then I think I'm like 0-2 in the final set right now. So it did do very, very well in the beginning though. Next game, we lead into Shadow Dragonite. They go for the Superpower and Dip, which I was kind of expecting, which is why I shielded it. It takes 14 Dragon Breath for it to get to the Superpower, so they threw it basically immediately. And here is the one where I go for the mistake. Because looking at the Registeel's health, if I bring in a Medicham immediately, they are getting to a Zap Cannon. So I'm getting minimal farm, but if I stay in with Registeel and farm up a lot of energy and then bring in my Medicham like 10 turns later, like 5 seconds later, they're still only getting to 1 Zap Cannon on their Registeel. So I could have farmed up a lot more energy on Registeel as well and gotten just more energy overall, whereas here I get the minimum amount of energy. They're still getting to the Zap Cannon. So I could have gotten more energy on my Registeel by staying in for a bit. But we do come out with a lot of energy on Medicham, meaning if they bring back in the Dragonite, we're going to be able to threaten it a lot with these ice punches. Go for the first ice punch. I'm assuming it's another one of these flying double steel, or maybe with a Dunsparce or something in the back. I've seen so many of these teams. Go for the back-to-back ice punch. They're going to have to shield both of these. They absolutely obliterate Shadow Dragonite. And then they farm Medicham all the way down, come out with a lot of energy. Dragonite does deal so much damage to pretty much everything. It's such an impressive Pokemon. I do decide to shield up the first move, and if I had known they were at back-to-back Superpower, I was not good enough at counting here. It was not good enough by me. Counting on a 1-against-1 turn move is not good. But if I'd known it was a Superpower, I would have tried to catch it on Sableye. We do bring in the Sableye. I don't want to throw my Zap Cannon into the Dragonite. I thought I could farm it down with Sableye instead, plus they were really debuffed. So we bring in the Sableye. We get enough of a head start to get to the foul play before they get to a move. They only get to 9 Shadow Claws, so they realize smartly they're only getting to 1 move here. So they go for the Drill Run, which does more damage, but it doesn't quite do enough damage to take out the Sableye. So we come out with a foul play for the Dragonite, and that is a good game. Next game, lead into another Stunfisk. Another pretty bad lead, so we swap into Sableye, they swap into Azumarill. But here, if we land the return, we're going to be able to apply a lot of pressure to Azumarill. But if they shield, we can just take shield advantage, because Registeel up a shield against Galarian Stunfisk is very good. So by grabbing, if we don't grab the shield, I think we can flip switch, because the return does so much damage to the Azumarill. But if they shield the first move, we can just let the Sableye go, bring in the Registeel. If they're not running Hydro Pump, we can just get a massive amount of energy on Registeel before leaving this matchup. They're not running Hydro Pump, so we can go for the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon does about 58% here. I had not played this matchup in so long, so I kind of just made that undercharge based on feel, and it ended up just being absolutely perfect. This just put a smile on my face. Look at my energy. It flicks up to 100 energy as we take out the Azumarill. Absolutely perfect undercharge. That just put a smile on my face. So we get to the Focus Blast on, not Umbreon, on Stunfisk. Bring in the Medicham, and they bring in a Jellicent. Yikes. You might think a Shadow Ball would KO from a Jellicent. It only does about 66%. So I'm thinking I can actually just let this go. But it is only the serve. Also, when you have 2 shields, they tend to bait a lot more than if you only have 1. Based on how much this Psychic did, I'm thinking I can take out the Jellicent with Medicham, with another Psychic. Also, it takes 4/3/3 for the serves for Jellicent. So there should be 3 away, so we can't get to the Psychic right before they get to another move here. And this is going to be quite close to KOing the Jellicent. It does KO the Jellicent, so now we can do a lot of counter damage to the Stunfisk. I basically just want the Stunfisk to spend some of its energy, so they can bring in Registeel safely. I was pretty sure, I'm just gonna let this go, it's just a Rock Slide. I need to swap out into Registeel. I was pretty sure they were only at a Rock Slide here, but even though I wasn't 100% sure, I really should not be letting this go, because even if they were at the Earthquake, they would not get to a Rock Slide plus an Earthquake before I got to another move. Next game, final game, we lead into Home Slice Henry's Swampert. I just wanted to show this for a bit of fun. This is a game that I would usually not show, because, spoiler, I am getting complete and utterly RPS'd. We lead Registeel into Swampert. We swap into Sableye, they make 2 Hydro Cannon, and then swap into Togetic. I go for a very foolish bait with Foul Play. I thought a return does so much damage that I could actually, if I landed the return, it was actually not a very foolish bait. A return does about 55%. If I land the return, I can farm them down, which is why in the moment, I didn't know it would do 55%, but I knew it would do a lot of damage. I looked it up afterwards. I thought they were going to shield. I think it might still be the better play for them to shield, because otherwise I would have been able to flip switch if I'd landed that return. But never mind, they go for the Ancient Power right before we get to the return on Sableye, and they get the boost, and now they can go for Dazzling Gleam on Registeel. I'm not really sure of my damage calc for Togetic. I should have undercharged this significantly more so I could get out with a move. Bring back in the Swampert, we bring in Medicham, they bring in Frostlass. Once again, if I land a Psychic, I can farm down the Frostlass. This is actually pretty huge. So I'm thinking they're gonna shield this, which is why I go for the bait once again. And they call it once again. Home/Henry just has my number. He completely RPSs me, calls everything, and that is a good game. That was the last battle for today, and overall, this is just such a good team. It is a bit of a shame that you have to stay in against Sableye and Deoxys, and that you can't swap out to see if there's a Charmer or a Noctowl in the back, but other than that, this team, it's 3 of the best Pokemon in the meta, and they just make such a strong team together. Other than that, fun fact of the day, with the rollout buff, Dunsparce and Registeel can simultaneous KO in the 2 shields if Registeel is not like super optimal. Dunsparce also wins the 1 shields against Registeel. Just a good thing to be aware of. Other than that, if you like what you see or feel like you learned something, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.